SAGES Stories.
Welcome to today's episode of SAGES Stories, the official podcast of SAGES, the Society of American Gastrointestinal and Endoscopic Surgeons. Please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you can stay up to date with our most recent episode, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to episode 25 of SAGES Stories, where we shine the light on some of SAGES' most impactful leaders. I'm your co-host, Dr. Kevin L. Hayek, and I think you all know where I'm from. In fact, many of you had the chance to personally experience why I love this city of Cleveland so much after the SAGES 2024 national meeting. I'm sure by the time this episode drops, it will feel like a distant memory, but I will always cherish having so many friends in this awesome city.
Okay, and I am Dr. Shirin Tofai, and while it wasn't my first time in the land, as they call it in Cleveland, not to be confused with La La Land, which is my hometown of Los Angeles, I must say it truly is true that Cleveland rocks. It was awesome. It was a pretty great show that SAGES put on. And Kevin, I thought this year was a fantastic annual meeting. The Rock and Roll Museum venue did not disappoint. I busted out my Lakers gear on
That was beautiful.
the next day, where we were kind of told not to dress up too formally. It was great.
Yeah, and we snuck in a new in-person podcast, which
Yep.
was super fun.
Very cool.
Hope that we can do more in-person SAGES stories in the future.
I really like those the best, the in-person ones. The Zoom thing is good, but it's not the same as being in person.
Not at all.
All right, well, we both had the chance to see today's guest while in Cleveland, and we are excited to have Dr. Christopher DuCoin on today's show. Yes, for those Francophiles, it is pronounced DuCoin and not DuCoin. Fun fact, and it's possible even he doesn't know this, but Chris has a new record for SAGES Stories guests. Not only have we been working on getting this episode scheduled for more than 3 months, there have also been a record, and we did count this, 67 emails to get today's podcast nailed down. And if that doesn't highlight how difficult it is to get 3 surgeons all over the US aligned with the time zones, I don't know what would.
I mean, that's crazy, but yes, 67 emails.
Right? Okay, in any case, frustrations aside, as an introduction to our guest, Dr. DuCoin completed his undergraduate degree at Tulane University in 2003. He's a young one. And his medical degree at St. George's School of Medicine in 2009. He also received an MPH, Master's in Public Health, in Epidemiology in 2005, also from Tulane. The next stop for Dr. DuCoin was in Orlando, Florida, where he completed his general surgery residency at Orlando Regional Medical Center. He also did not 1, but 2 fellowships, just like our buddy Kevin here. The
Two's
first,
better than 1.
Yeah, the first in minimally invasive surgery and advanced gastrointestinal surgery in my time zone and my medical school, University of California, San Diego. Great campus. He then went on to a different continent to do a fellowship in advanced endoscopy with Dr. Karl Fuchs at the Marcus Krankenhaus University in Frankfurt, Germany. I can't wait to hear that whole story later today. Since completing his training, he has been climbing multiple ladders, both professionally and within national societies. His first position was at Tulane for 5 years. And then in 2019, he moved on to the University of South Florida in Tampa, where he now serves as Vice Chair of Surgery for Clinical Operations. I need to figure out what that means. He is also the Division Chief of GI Surgery and is in multiple sections, including my favorite, hernia and abdominal wall reconstruction, in addition to foregut surgery, minimally invasive surgery, and bariatric and metabolic surgery. Phew, that was a lot. But all that said, welcome, Chris, to Sage's Stories.
Thank you guys for having me so much, and sincerely apologize about the mass emailing. It's like my ethos to try and not email but call. But here we are. We made it.
We made it. We made it. As always, it was great to see you in April, Chris. About halfway in the interval where we were trying to get you on the show, and we are thrilled to highlight your story on today's episode. To start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up, and then some of the impactful stops along your journey so far?
Yeah, Kevin. So I think my growing up was probably pretty classic of the 1980s. It is considered like the latchkey generation. I was born in Philadelphia, but was there for a very short time. My dad had a government payback option for his dental school. It was interesting. He had two brackets, so you ended up in one of the cities and one of the brackets, and one of the brackets was Philadelphia and Idaho. So where we were in Philadelphia and Idaho, the other bracket was Florida and Hawaii, and he opted for the Florida Hawaii combo because he was
super strange.
Very
Why?
odd.
I mean, that's very odd. Yeah.
Didn't want to end up in Idaho, and we didn't get Hawaii, so we ended up in Florida, and that's kind of how we got there. I think I moved there when I was 18 months old, so most of my formative memory is really just growing up in Florida, and it was a really neat youth when I kind of think about it. Lived in the same neighborhood my entire life, and my 13 closest friends all lived within 5 blocks of each other, and we went essentially from pre-K to high school together. And it's a neat thing to reflect on, because a whole bunch of 5-year-old boys are very similar, but you take those 5-year-old boys and then compound that time over the next 13 years till they're 18, and they all go in very, very different directions. So in high school, people could never figure out how this jock was friends with this kind of smart geeky kid, or this kid who was smoking cigarettes out behind the shop class. But we remained best friends, and we're still really good friends to this day. So that was kind of a lot of my growing up was really a little bit of that group. I mean, I think my mom was around a fair amount. I like, she did the lion's share of raising me. It was her and my sister around quite a bit. My sister's 18 months younger than me, but I've definitely, I think, a pretty strong feminine influence from my mom and sister being around quite a bit. Now, my dad was there, but just didn't see him. He worked quite a bit. And then, but that group of guy friends was really impressive. And still remember we'd kind of bicycle over to the beach, and our babysitter was literally the lifeguard. We'd bang on the lifeguard tower and let them know we were there for the afternoon. We'd go boogie board and surf and hang out and bike home, and that was the afternoon. And it was a great youth. And I think medicine and surgery in particular crept into my life in a very seemingly subversive but very purposeful way. My mom would constantly, tell me little things. You've got hands like a surgeon, these kind of small little gestures that always were almost like a whisper in my ear of what I could be, or what my life could be. I don't think she forced or overly encouraged, but really I had this implantation in my brain that I can remember being maybe middle school, at least, thinking like, I really want to grow up to be a surgeon, I think. And getting to medical school, and there's a story in getting to medical school, I just knew from day one it was surgery or bust. So yeah, it was a neat youth. I had a ton of fun all through public school systems, and it was a good adventure. So yeah, that's kind of how I at least got through high school. I guess one interesting story I'll tack there on the end is I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. Her name's Maddie, kind of light of my life. But in high school, they took so it was a huge high school, 2,600 students, but they took the 3 top students, and the 3 top students happened to be myself, my future wife, and my stepbrother Gavin. And you got
Wow.
to
Wow.
you got to go and shadow somebody for the day in the field you wanted to. Clearly, I'd already started thinking about surgery. So I got to go shadow a surgeon, and the other two got to come tag along. And first case I ever saw was a carotid endarterectomy. Standing at the head of the bed next to anesthesia, they begin the case. A little bit of bovie smoke, and all I remember the nurse hearing from the nurse is, "Oh, he's turning green." And I passed out in the OR
Oh
in front of
my
my essentially
gosh.
brother and my
Very
future
Oh,
common.
wife.
It
Yeah,
is
and
very,
they
yeah.
still remind me of that quite often. So
did
that was my
you
first
didn't
OR
happen
experience.
to hit, did you hit your head?
No. They
So
literally wheeled a
they
chair in
caught
and
you. They
caught me.
caught
Yeah,
you.
yeah. But I
Okay.
went down.
I mean,
I did.
that's a common story, and
It
a lot of
is.
surgeons have initially
Yeah.
passed out or have some story where they passed out at some point. It happens.
The reason I asked if
It
you hit your
happened.
head is because I had a recent student a year, maybe 2 years ago, who unfortunately did
Ooh.
hit their head, and it became we're a trauma hospital, and it's like I got down for the concussion protocol and everything. So anyone out there who's considering that shadowing things like that, and or having someone shadow from high school or college, just definitely be cognizant that is a definite hazard in the OR.
Yeah, have a chair nearby.
Chair or just sit down on the floor is what I tell them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't even play
And
around.
stay away from the sterile
Yeah.
everything. But it's not a contraindication to wanting to be a,
No. Here you go. You got an example here.
oh,
Yeah. Test case.
Case in
yeah,
point.
very true. And out of curiosity, your group of high school friends, what did they end up doing?
Oh, they're all over the place. Some
Yeah.
of them went to college. There's a few of them who I really think this is neat, didn't go to college and went out and started their own businesses, and they're wildly successful. Yeah, they're all over the country. I think maybe only one still lives back home, but really just happenstance. Within the next few months, we're all going to get together, kind of a reunion. One of our friends got an unfortunate diagnosis, so we kind of want to go
Mm,
rally around him and just get together and
Mhm.
celebrate life, really. So.
sorry.
That's really wonderful. So you also have more than one degree. You also have a master's in public health, similar to Kevin, who's I you just
MD is
finished
just
that,
not
Kevin?
enough for some of us. We need more than MD.
Kevin just got his MPH recently,
No,
yes?
It's
MBA.
awesome.
I'm
Oh,
more
MBA,
the corporate
right.
side of things, less the now I did get a nonprofit certificate with it, so hopefully
Okay.
that gives me a little more street cred with Chris. But
Maybe tell a little bit about what promoted you to get that done.
Well, yeah. So, in full transparency, getting my MPH was trying to get my MD. So, I in high school, that same group, almost everybody in Florida went to one of the state schools, and I had this revelation that I just honestly wanted to live a different life. I wanted to go down a different road. I wanted to try something different, and that's where Tulane came in. It's kind of funny that I got into University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League school, Northeast, and my mom thought I should look at Tulane. And you at the time take a 17-year-old boy to New Orleans. I was sold. So I went to Tulane on a full ride academic scholarship, and in my first semester was on academic probation. It was
oh,
a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had a good. So I was able to recoup. You both are making a terrible face right now
A
for the
lot of
audience.
yeah,
Yeah,
distractions in
yeah, a lot of
lots
distractions.
New
of
So
Orleans.
distractions.
yeah,
Yes, lots of
so
distractions.
it was a huge growing experience, and I don't think I really understood what it took to be a good student during those 4 years, even though I excelled so well in high school. So at the end of it, I applied to medical school, got a few interviews, didn't get in. So I said, okay, what do I really want to do? And I was a big believer in population health, and we can kind of get to some ideas on how surgeons still participate in population health. But I was a big believer in population health. So I was super interested in epidemiology and the study and kind of treatment of large base populations. I liked Tulane because it just wasn't a public health school, but it was a school of tropical medicine. Sounds kind of very romantic, but it was a
Yeah.
neat kind of environment to be in. So applied, got in, and did exceedingly well. Learned how to study. I think I graduated number 2 in that group. Scores were phenomenal. Everything was good. applied to medical school and didn't get in. Didn't
Mm.
get in. 33 letters of rejection. I keep them in the glove compartment of my car. Don't ask me why. That's where they live. They remind me a lot of kind of perseverance. And that's how I ended up. We didn't really highlight it, but I went to a Caribbean medical school. So I went to St.
Yeah,
George's
tell
in
us a little bit about
Grenada.
that. So how did you,
Best.
so you got those rejections and you kind of pivoted and the next year applied to the West Indies then?
Yep. And actually, Kevin, I had applied at the same time. It was my backup
Oh,
plan. I wasn't gonna
you,
waste another year.
okay,
So
okay. So okay.
yeah, I kind of had this, and you guys ever get this thing where you just kind of know how it's going to work out? So I had already had
Yeah.
this idea in my head. I'm going to end up in the Caribbean and it's going to be fine. I kind of had this, really, it's going to be okay for me. So it's kind of a neat story because it sounds like a little bit of failure, but I look at it as more of really like ultimate success and a testament to grit and determination on what you really want to do with your life. So I was in my public health school getting rejection letter after rejection letter. And I just remember my dad, every 2 or 3 days would call me up like, hey, any news on the application? Say any. And finally I said, Dad, look, I promise you, this will be some of the best news I ever get when I get an acceptance letter. I will call you. You'll be the first person I call. Just please
Wow.
stop asking me. It is exhausting me. So I'm in my master's degree program. I have 2 jobs. I'm working for the Department of Health and Hospitals. I'm working for the state. We're building these relief programs for, inflatable hospital systems that eventually get used in Hurricane Katrina. Super cool stuff. Rejection letters are coming in. And finally, I get into Grenada. And I'm so excited. Call my dad. I'm euphoric. I'm going to be a physician. Doesn't matter what the road takes. I'm going to be a physician and most likely a surgeon. So the other kind of sidebar to this is I quit both of those jobs immediately, go down to one of my favorite like restaurant bar establishments and say, hey, I've got about 3 months. Can I bartend here? They hire me on, have this incredible last experience in New Orleans. And then it's off to Grenada from there. And Grenada was the perfect environment for me. It was an incredible opportunity to really focus on studying. I think I mentioned I learned how to really refine my study skills. And I can, I don't think the audience would be interested in that, but I figured out what worked for me, and it worked in Grenada. And this was back when the MCATs were, you got your 3-point and 2-point score, and it was a percentile. And on both of them, I scored in the 99th percentile. I just figured it out. I was studying the right way in Grenada, and things just started to move in the right direction. And residency is an interesting thing too. So I was sure I was going to end up in the Northeast. We do all of our clinical work. You do 2 years
Yeah.
in Grenada, 2 years in the Northeast. I'd done 2 years in the Northeast. All my letters were in the Northeast. I thought I was going to end up there. But the interviews are always between November and like January. So it's snowing and it's, slosh on the ground and all these interviews. And I did this throwaway interview. Well, I wouldn't call it throwaway because I ended up there in Orlando because it was close to where I grew up on the East Coast of Florida. And I wanted to use it as an excuse to go home. And when I got there, I got off the plane. I'm in shorts and flip flops. So, long story short, I ranked Orlando Health or Orlando Regional Medical Center #1, and it
Wow.
worked out for me. I got to go there, and I feel very blessed. And there's Raul Rosenthal played a critical role in getting me there, and he was down in Cleveland Clinic in Weston, and
Yeah.
it was neat. It's been a fun journey, and yeah, I don't know. I feel very blessed to be where I'm at right now.
Yeah, Raul Rosenthal has done an amazing job with that program. He was our fellow. He was our first MIS bariatric fellow at Cedars-Sinai, was Raul. And
Really?
been going on for like 30, we're over 30, almost 35 years out now.
Wow.
Yeah,
Fun fact.
fun fact, Cedars-Sinai. But I would love for the people who are listening to see and hear this story because A, you can't predict your future. B, there's always a way. When there's a will, there's a way. And your story, and there's many others of people that were, I have friends that failed like D's in high school, and now they're like one of the smartest, best surgeons. Because once they got to high school, they kind of figured out, okay, now they got to clean up their act, or they started understanding and the topics and the way they were learning was kind of more their style than whatever was going on in high school. In your case, it was after kind of college.
It's
And you
similar to Jeff
persisted.
Ponsky's. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to Jeff Ponsky's, but a very similar kind of auspicious start, it had to get a little bit of a come to Jesus moment in a way, just to kind of realize that, you gotta sometimes just pull up the bootstraps and figure out what works for you. Because yeah, I mean, where there's a will, there's a way, but you also have to meet certain criteria. It's not like you can just
Yeah,
be like, well, I
of course.
really, yeah.
But
Yeah,
it shouldn't be, oh, I didn't do well in high school, or
Yeah.
I didn't do well in college, and therefore I cannot be a doctor or surgeon, or even a good one. Of course you can be a good one. It kind of depends on what your traits are and how things kind of mesh together.
yeah, and I will say it's a lot of it's believing in yourself and having grit and having that long-term vision
Mhm.
and what you can accomplish, but it is critical decisions too. And you do have to meet certain marks, like Kevin said. But I'll never forget, I'd come home between my junior and senior year in high school, and I'd taken my wouldn't be an what is the test there? MCAT? No.
High school's
Yeah.
SAT.
No,
SAT
no, no.
or
But
ACT.
I'm sorry, between
SAT?
in college to get into medical
Oh,
school.
MCAT.
MCAT.
Yeah, it is the MCAT. Yeah, so I'd taken my MCAT and I'd done okay, but I wanted to retake it. And I just drove all the way home, and my dad takes me out to dinner. And we're sitting there, and we hadn't even ordered dinner. And he's like, "What's your plans for the summer?" And I was like, I really I need to take that test again. And
Mhm.
he's like, "Okay, what do you need to do to take the test?" I got to be in my environment. I know I need to study. And he's like, "Okay, well, where would that environment be?" I got to go back. I study in the library. I have my routine. I'm figuring things out. And he goes, "Okay, if
Yeah.
you really want to do this, go." And I was like, "What do you mean? We're in, Jensen Beach, Stuart, Florida." He's like, you know, "It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's time. You're going to make a decision. You're going to make it right now." I was like, "All right, Dad." Didn't even unpack my car. Got back in my car, drove back to New Orleans, studied for the test. And
Wow.
those critical decisions, I think, help a lot. But it does, I think parental belief in an individual helps quite a bit. And I have 3 kids, and I think about that often, how much parental influence and belief in your children can kind of go a long way. And both my parents helped me tremendously in that regard, especially uh, belief in yourself and an internal belief in your kids.
And do you think the initial, like, you have hands of a surgeon, or you're very kind of adept at doing small tasks, or is that what kind of pushed you towards surgery? Because I had no idea what surgery was until I was in medical school. But you knew apparently what a surgery career would have been.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, I think it kind of gave like seed to thought to grow into like, what does this look like? And then one of my grandfathers was a OBGYN oncologist. I had no idea what that was as a
Okay.
kid, but I remember going through the hospitals with him, and the level of respect and the hellos and the people saying hi, and it was just an incredible thing. And I just remember being like, I knew he was a physician, but I remember thinking, wow, I want to be like that. And then it goes back to my mother saying, like, a lot of praise towards her father. But I think it definitely helped quite a bit give me a little guidance in what I want to do with my life. And it's always been, I think I'm in a unique scenario where I've always kind of wanted to do what I'm doing right now. So I live a lot of gratitude too, because man, if I didn't have this, I don't, really have a strong plan B.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel very similar to that, and just having this, it's really a fulfilling, vocation that we have, and I think part of it is just the care that we get to provide to our patients, and they just give you so much joy when you help them through a tough time. I agree with you. I got my MBA, but I'm sort of like, at the end of the day, I love just being in the OR and being a part of this, this field. So that's fantastic. That it's like that saying. It's not a job when you enjoy it. It's like what you want to do every day. It's fantastic. So
Couldn't agree with you more.
your surgical career, you did your residency fellowship in the States, but then we kind of alluded to this earlier. You did some additional training in both South America and Germany. So talk to us a little bit about that decision, how that came to be, and what it was like to do training abroad.
Yeah, so that decision kind of came from what you were just saying, this just massive desire to learn and be the real cutting edge of what's going on, not just in the States, but around the country. And then what did that look like if you could bring some of that back to the United States? So at the time, robotic surgery is kind of coming into its folds. And I think they were trying to figure out bariatric surgery in that space. And my fellowship director, Dr. Horgan, had really, really strong relationships in South America. So we were talking about this gentleman, Pablo Alamazu. Pablo is a wonderful guy, and take the opportunity to say thank you, Pablo, for what you taught me. But Horgan said, why don't you go down and work with Pablo? He's doing a lot of this laparoscopic omega loop technique. I think there's an opportunity to bring that back and maybe work on it on the robotic platform, because we didn't have movement with the robot. It was, it was really like a single quadrant procedure. And what Pablo was doing was essentially the entire bypass in the left upper quadrant. The idea there was we could translate that back to robotic surgery. Well, at the same time, I was the clinical fellow at UCSD, but there was a research fellow named Hans Fuchs, and Hans knew how kind of geeked up I was over esophageal surgery. I love everything about the esophagus, from the pathophysiology to the cell structure to the surgery to the pathology. Just, I love it. And what Hans was saying is his dad, Carl Fuchs, was one of Tom DeMeester's first fellows. And in Germany, they really have regionalized healthcare. So that where the hospital where Carl Fuchs was kind of the regional based hospital for all of esophageal surgery. So Hans was like, if you really want to do esophageal surgery in high volume and see some new stuff, and knew at that time was the third space endoscopy, or what was really new was POEM, per oral myotomy. Why don't you go work with my dad, Carl? And I was like, you know what? I haven't started my job. I've got this unique little window here. Let's go for it. So kind of packed my bags and moved to Mendoza, Argentina for a few months. And then after that, took the cheapest flight, which was from Mendoza to Buenos Aires to Houston to Montreal to Frankfurt, Germany. And I remember showing up the guy running the
oh my gosh.
The guy running the passport was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I took the cheapest
40
flight
hours?
there.
Was it about 40, 45 hours? That sounds about 45 hours-ish.
Kevin, it was an incredible journey that, my passport got stamped a lot. It was a trip to get there. But once I got there, it was phenomenal. And I was adopted real quickly into the German culture and just had a lovely, lovely time there. But I think that's what kind of set me apart for that first job back at Tulane. And when I kind of applied with this almost like cornucopia of new skill sets, it was, I think the chair was very pleased with me going.
And did you need to learn the language of each of these countries?
So great question. In Mendoza, almost everyone spoke Spanish, so it was a little tricky. My Spanish got better, not fluent, but much better. But in Germany, it was a little unfortunate because the Germans all wanted to practice their English, so there was really little opportunity for me to practice German. Almost everybody around me spoke English when they knew I was American.
Yeah. And then maybe talk a little bit about your post-training career. Your first job was at Tulane, and then you transitioned to University of South Florida, very different programs. What move when things are going so well? Like, why move?
Yeah, it's and spot on. Tulane was everything I could have asked for in an academic career. It had the history, it had the names, it had the authors of the books, and it really attracts some characters in surgery. Norm McSwain, one of the infamous trauma surgeons, was there, and I got to work with him. And what a gentleman! Bernie Jaffe, they're just amazing individuals. So Tulane was a huge win for me in my career. And when I got there, there was an opportunity to work within the clerkship, and I expressed some interest, and I figured out, some things were very peculiar. I remember showing up and they wanted me to help with the clerkship, and I was kind of given the same textbooks I had as a medical student. I thought, well, we could do a little better. So we worked on curriculum development, and, in a 150, 200-year-old programs, an interesting thing. People don't want to change things too much, but we made a lot of moves. And the students were really responsive, and the department got highlighted, and the department hadn't been highlighted. I remember they hadn't won the clerkship of the year since 1984. and we got the clerkship of the year the first year as they were running the clerkship. So I quickly moved into the clerkship director. Next thing you know, I was the director of the simulation center. We started a fellowship, and then my chair transition. So I would pause on that topic for a second too. That was kind of an interesting moment. So I'd been recruited for almost a year once Dr. Doug Slakey had kind of picked up on my international work. He kind of started almost developing a position for me back at Tulane. And I got there, and within about 6 months of being in Tulane, Doug was released from his role as chair of surgery. And I had this tremendous amount of loyalty towards him. And he called me into his office because it really reminded me, I felt like I had this sensation from like Rudy, like I was going to go in and put my jersey on the table and say, I'm out of here if you take Dr. Slakey out of here. I can't do it. But Doug, he told me, you know what? He goes, this is a good thing for you. You're already doing really well. The new chair that they had appointed was a woman by the name of Mary Kalaki, who I would consider myself extremely close friends with right now. And we've been very close for quite some time. We talk almost, I'd say, on a weekly basis. But Doug told me, you're going to succeed here. You fit the culture here. You are a highly valued individual. What you should do is go into Dr. Kalaki's office right now and tell her you're going to stay, because there's a lot of confusion and turmoil when a chair leaves, and it'll be very comforting for her to know. And I think that move that Doug kind of told me to do, which was a genuine move because I wanted to stay, allowed Dr. Kalaki and I to build this incredible, long-lasting relationship where I really feel like I moved up to her kind of right-hand person. And you'll see this theme repeat itself because I think I'm kind of the chair's right-hand person right now at USF, but right-hand person for the next 5 years while I was at Tulane. And eventually I was under 40 years old and division chief, and we recruited a past president of ASMBS and built a very strong program. I built 2 different bariatric programs. One I'm extremely proud of. It was only for Medicaid patients, and both of those programs are still in existence now. And
that's impressive.
it was a good thing. And then to answer your question, why USF? I mean, I think everything I just told you in the last 30 minutes or so, it's all been about me. Right, the whole story is like what was good for me in my career. My wife is by far the most important person in my life, and when we had our first daughter, Sophia, everything changed. I looked at the school systems. I looked at what her life would look like growing up in New Orleans. I looked at what her friends could be. I looked at what her cultural influences could be, and I realized, like, I reflected back on my childhood, and I really wanted her to have something like that. I wanted her to be able to go to a public school that was safe and that she would feel comfortable. And I wanted her to have friends that were kind of equal nature and character that they could grow there over their life. And Maddie and I'll never forget, we made this laundry list of pros and cons. And it was really hard because if you looked at my list, Tulane had filled my cup and overflowed it. And I'm so grateful for everything that university gave me. But when we looked at everything outside the hospital system in my career, New Orleans just didn't match up to where we wanted our life to be. And this is where I'd say colleagues are more important than anything, because it was a Doug Slakey, now my old chair, calling up the chair at USF, whose name was Paul Koo, saying, we've got a great guy in New Orleans. Happenstance meeting somebody at a SAGES meeting, SP Bowers, who was in Jacksonville, Florida. I called up. So at the same time, Doug's calling Paul up, the two, ex-chair of Tulane, current chair at USF. I'm calling SP Bowers up in Jacksonville. Bowers is calling a gentleman at USF, Vic Volanovich. And next thing you know, within 2 weeks, we make this decision. We want to move back to Florida. We had grown up on the East Coast. Tampa's on the West. I'm getting phone calls, actively getting recruited to USF, and it was a moment I'll never forget, walking in Dr. Kalaki's office, who now we've built this incredible relationship over 5 years. And I think it's we both cried. It was an intense moment. I think it was a real raw thing. I think it was good to be honest. That I told her, and this was an interesting conversation because I can see it in her face, the counter coming. And I said, Dr. Kalaki, the worst thing that could happen right now is you give me an offer that makes it hard to walk away from Tulane. I have to leave. This is the best thing for my family. And it's been great. We went from having Sophia to now we've got Ella, we call Elizabeth and Cal, and our family's grown. My sister was at Johns Hopkins. She's now my next door neighbor. She lived 4 houses down. My mom on the East Coast moved over to Tampa, and we've created kind of this new life here in Tampa, Florida. And it's been incredibly beautiful gift of life that we've all now get to experience as a family together. And I'd tell you, my job satisfaction is just as high as it was in New Orleans, but now we've got this whole incredible family support system that's around us as well. And again, it's almost like too good to be true. It's like a little fairy tale.
I mean, you're definitely busy. It took us 67 emails to get you.
Yeah, seriously, it's a DuCoin fiefdom that is
yeah.
that's developing there. It's funny. I'm glad you talked about Vic Vilanovich. He was, as you know, the SSAT president. Just finished his term, and I got to hear his SSAT presidential address. And in it, he talked a lot about titles, which he said we as surgeons collect like trading cards. That he literally had a slide on some trading cards, and you now have the titles of vice chair and chief of 2 different divisions. And based on your own prompting in your email with us, what's with all these titles? What do we do with this?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think, and I agree with Vic, and I'd take it even a little bit further. A title has to mean something, and it has to have purpose behind it, and it has to represent something, and you have to be able to do something with it. So it should represent a little bit of meaning and influence in the group you're trying to support and represent. It's not an individual statement. It's a totality of who you're trying to affect around you. So I think I've done well in the academic setting. And when I really think back why, it's really, I think, good team building and good communication. Yeah, so in 2021, Vic Vilanovich handed me the baton. He'd been, I think, division chief of general surgery for about 10 years and kind of handed it to me. And we've done some amazing things from there. You kind of commented earlier on the section development. The vice chair is another, I think, it's been an intense role because operations is kind of how you run your program a little bit, from clinical space and allocation to OR and block utilization. Those are some of the most hospital systems' hottest topics. And it's a little bit of maintaining a level head, but it's really trying to be, in my opinion, genuinely empathetic for those you represent, trying to see where they're coming from and really support them. And that's kind of the way I've always looked at leadership. It's a servant leader leading from behind, but at the same time trying to lead as much as you can by example. Early to work, last one out, doing the grind and the grit. And that's kind of what happened with the interim chief of GI. So I actually have 2 chairs I report to now, which can be a little tricky, where I report to the chair of surgery, clearly. But now I also report to the chair of medicine, trying to help set up and give the gastroenterologist framework to work around. And it's a little bit, has nothing to do. I don't think it's because I'm a surgical endoscopist. I think it has to do just with the ability to help that group from a third-party perspective and help them grow. So a little bit of servant leader and trying to help the individuals around you, but as much as you accumulate titles, you have to be able to relinquish and let them go too. So that's a habit that I've worked very diligently on. I was actually took a demotion to come to USF. I went from being a division chief to a section chief, and since getting here in 2019, I've gone from section to division to vice chair. But helping that framework and setting other people for success too, especially in the sections within those divisions.
That's great. Yeah, I think one of the things we definitely want to hear about is your your introduction outside of your hospital system, but also to national societies. I mean, certainly we want to hear about SAGES. If we have time, we'll hear about some of your other work. But when did you first get involved with SAGES, and what were some of the initial steps along the journey you've had in there?
Oh yeah, that's so again, Orlando Regional Medical Center, 2nd year resident, first meeting at SAGES, a community practice surgeon. Again, huge thank you here, Dr. Daryl Weir, if he ever hears this, brought me to SAGES. We were walking around, and he goes, "Hey, there's Aurora Pryor." I go, I don't know who that is." Introduced me. It was nice. Don't know who Aurora Pryor is. And then he was a member of the research committee. So he said, "Come in and just sit down in the research committee with me." And this is when things were a lot less formal. Sit down in the research committee. At the end, I noticed this Aurora Pryor person is chair of the research committee, and he says, "Hey, go up and say hello." So really enjoyed my time in the committee. So I introduced myself again and said I'd like to be a member of the research committee. Fast forward, what are we? I don't know, like 15 years, something plus from there. I'm chair of the research committee. And it's been great. And Aurora Pryor writes just about every letter of promotion or recommendation I've ever gone up for. And again, has developed into one of my close friends and colleagues. And we share sailing stories, and great individual. And I know she's done a podcast with you guys, but it's just those little tiny introductions sometimes that you don't know what you're getting yourself into. But again, it comes back to genuine interest in surgery. And I think that's where both the success, I want to say, at work and outside is just, I love it. Like, I love everything about it. I love it from the operative field to the politics behind it, to how you get engaged and make a difference, and how you support learners coming up behind you and pay it forward. It's just been great. So it's funny, there's individuals who now sit on the research committee that I look at, and again, if listening, Richard Garfunkel, all eyes on you, my friend. You can see that there's a lot of success in store for certain people, and I don't know if Pryor saw that or not, but she's again heavily influenced my career.
What a great story. And for those of you who are listening and are ambitious, getting involved at SAGES starts at the committee level, right? So
100%.
that's really amazing. It's great that you had the mentorship to have someone kind of lead you into that pathway.
Yeah, it was neat, and SAGES has been just a fantastic group, and loved everything from the content and presentation. The same meeting, I gave my first podium presentation, and I walked into the room, and it was the main auditorium, and I just couldn't
Nice.
believe it, how big the space was. And I had prepared, and I knew my slides, and wow, was it overwhelming. And it's neat now.
Which meeting was that?
It's San Diego. I wish I
San
could tell you the
Diego. Oh
exact year, but it was
yeah.
San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was neat. And now I run a pretty busy research team, and we heavily put people into SAGES, and it's neat to, I don't know, I kind of like to walk in the room with them when they look around for the first time, and they're like, "Oh my
Just
gosh!"
see their impression. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we wanted to touch on is your work as chair of the Research and Development Committee. So what are some of the main goals, some of the vision of that committee?
Yeah. So the committee, I think, has changed quite a bit over the years. It used to be almost like an exclusively grant review and allocation committee, and there was a decent amount of grants we'd give out, but there were seed grants. And they have tremendous value to individuals in setting up their research career and leading towards additional funds in the future. And then sometime after that, the committee, and this is prior to me, gets involved in more of career development. There's a career development award, incredible, impactful award that really changes trajectory of an individual's career when they receive that. And then recently, the group has been getting more into clinical trials and actually setting up the framework for large multi-institutional studies. So if you look at when I look at the research committee and I look at SAGES to me has always been this incredibly science, technology, innovation society built on a lot of educational based models where education was kind of the foundation. My thought is there's so much potential for research in the future. And right now, a way to kind of change it and make it really unique is we built this research data network. So it's an incredibly powerful tool where we can now link researchers at various institutions. You can get really great different demographics of patient populations, You can change how researchers kind of communicate and interact. It's in this incredible lattice. And I think Dr. Silla mentioned in our presidential address, we have almost 100 institutions signed up, and we just started this a few months ago. So this is, I think, an incredibly powerful tool. And this is where I look at hopefully research going within SAGES to almost someday, hopefully, carrying that same level of weight as SAGES looks at education.
Well, I've applied to a lot of these kind of not career grants because I wasn't that interested in the bigger career grants, but some of the smaller grants. I got none of them, by the way. So, but I think you applied to some too, right, Kevin?
Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, I have. There.
Did you get all of
Yes.
them?
I also got none of them, so apparently they're pretty difficult to get. I mean, I haven't cracked the code yet, but I think my time is coming. I have to come up with a good idea. But there's no way I would use a podcast.
We have
I
Yeah,
would
you
never
wouldn't use a
use a
podcast to
podcast. I would
shamelessly
never use a
get
podcast to
me.
influence the committee's decision on grant funding. I
Very
mean,
crafty, you two.
I would never, ever.
I see what's going on here. Very crafty.
Oh, come on. It was too ripe for us to not jump on that. So okay, we'll leave the grants alone because we can't get them anyway. Can you walk us through the process of onboarding a site that is interested in joining the Research Development Network, or the RDN?
Yeah, for sure. So first, you just have to you sign up, right? And you kind of say what your research areas of interest are, what your infrastructure that you have. Do you have a coordinator? Do you have an IRB process? What does it look like? Have you used a standardized IRB before? Have you conducted clinical trials before? It's almost like a little litmus of like how's your institute set up? And once you put that in, then you get access on the back end. So then you can kind of communicate. You literally can say like, I'm looking. So I do a lot of foregut surgery. Achalasia we'll consider a rare disease. I'm looking to study achalasia in a certain subset population, or achalasia in general. Who else could fit the model of potential researchers or collaborators? And then the data network helps make those connections. In a reverse model, you could say that you get approached by industry to study something, but they want a multi-institutional trial. The way it kind of works now is, you pick maybe 2 or 3 of your closest, or 4 or 5 of your closest colleagues who you went to training with, or from societies, but that's not really, a fair breadth of, engagement and, diversity. So what the network can do is now pair you up with individuals who can fill gaps in diversity in specific patient populations and what have you. So it's incredibly like unique. I think there's other groups starting to work on something similar, but this thing is built, it's ready to go. People are signed up, and I would just encourage people to use it.
What are some of the advantages of signing up for this?
Yeah, and the biggest thing is access, right? You get access to the other researchers, and you get access to collaborate. Yeah, I think the biggest thing to sign up is you're now plugged in. Research becomes a new tool. You're not in a silo. You can really expand that network, larger patient populations, better means of studying. Yeah, I think it's tremendous. It's almost hard to know at this point because we haven't, stressed the system. We're still kind of figuring out how it all can work. And really, I would say be creative in thought. So if there's another way you think this network could be used, please let us know. I mean, the SAGES mantra is be innovative. So let's see how we can test the limits of research and really collaborative research.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I assume you feel that this will definitely grow in the future. We'll add the link for the RDN in our show notes for anyone who's interested. But, what do you think the future is going to be? Going to be similar? It's going to kind of evolve into something even greater?
Yeah, I think so. I think from an investigator initiated research platform, I think there's a tremendous amount of potential. But then again, that's mainly the collaborative network. I think is SAGES potentially becomes the home to really well-run clinical trials. That is something that SAGES can offer that I don't think anybody, society or institution, can really do. What we'll be able to do now is when good clinical trials come to SAGES, we can set up really well thought out methodology and access for those clinical trials and get them into institutions that can get them done. You can't tell you how many times you get to an institution where there's either a red tape process with contractual agreement with clinical trials, or you actually get it all done, but the patient accrual's low. This is what the data network can do. It can find the right clinical trial site for all of the studies that need to go on. So again, I still think there's so much more to come, but I think from clinical trial work to investigation and initiate studies, there's just the potential is still unknown almost.
That's
Nice.
great. Well, we do want to be respectful to your family, who probably would like to see you tonight. But as we near the end of the show, we come to the most famous segment of SAGES stories, which is the "We Are the SAGES" segment.
We are the SAGES. Sing it, everybody. We are the ones who make it bright our days, so let's not cheating. Have you had a good time tonight? There's a choice we make. We got a lot more coming. We are dancing, singing lives. It's true. Let's give a big hand for SAGES Party. Give them a big hand.
Anyone who's at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at SAGES 2024 just knows just how valuable this song is to our society, as we saw our leaders and international colleagues up on that stage singing their hearts out. For you, what was your most memorable SAGES moment up to this point?
Oh gosh, my most memorable SAGES moment. I think maybe, I think it was Houston Space Center, kind of just having a blast in that venue was next level. That was a great time.
I had a concussion from a car crash a week prior, so I did not make Houston. I canceled that trip, so I missed it. Yeah, I was in a car crash the week prior, so I was not able to fly.
I am so sorry, Kevin, because I think that was probably an incredible moment. I don't know. There's so many. Again, that San Diego trip, I think the event was on an aircraft carrier. I mean, it's always something. But it's just, what I really love? I love the human interaction. I love walking down the hallway and just seeing friends. Jokingly, I remember as a resident listening to my attendings, and they would say, I can't wait to go to this conference and see my friends. And I remember thinking to myself, man, like, what are you talking about? Your friends at a conference? That doesn't make sense. And now I feel the same way. Like, I look forward to SAGES, to seeing my friends and colleagues and having a good time. And that's, to me, that's the best part of SAGES, is the people. I could say all these events or things or whatnot, but it's really the people that make that organization so unique and special.
Well, and that's why it was actually so overwhelming for me this past year, like just seeing all my friends like in my city, in my town. Like it was really special. I agree with you. It was like you're overwhelmed with some of the emotion of that. And it's going to be in well, not quite Sharon's hometown, but close enough next year.
In the LBC.
In the LBC. And then maybe it'll be Tampa after that.
It is. You guys,
it is?
No, it is. It's Tampa. So Tampa's 26. So we got the whole trifecta.
We got the trifecta here. That's fantastic.
Okay.
All right. I did not know that. All right. Well, I don't know that we're allowed to know that. So.
Well, there you have it. No, I think it's common. I think it's out there.
Oh, it's common. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Kevin took me out to dinner at his hometown. That was really sweet.
Before it all kicked off, and Sharon's going to return the favor.
I was going to say, Sharon, I see what you're doing here. Do I have to do now the dinner with?
Yes, then Chris, then you're going to return the favor in 2026. Okay, so because we only like to go to the best spots. That's the key.
Yeah,
my wife is a great cook. Maddie will have it all set up.
Perfect. Even better.
I'm going to put that in big block letters on my calendar.
We gotta get the dates, but we're crashing Chris's in 2026.
More than welcome.
Well, I would say next year is going to be amazing in Long Beach. I'm very curious how they're going to spruce up the social part of it, because Long Beach is a very interesting town. I wouldn't say it has its positives, but it also, it's not Los Angeles technically.
Yes.
A little bit south of us. But yeah, we
Maybe
will put the abstracts are already open for
Yeah.
for SAGES.
Abstracts
So
are open. I couldn't believe
link in
that.
there.
We'll put that
And
link.
then you can be like Chris and have this amazing experience at your first SAGES meeting in a humongous auditorium with a perfectly prepared presentation.
yeah, and almost pass out again.
And
Aw.
again, yes. Yes.
Well, this was an awesome episode. Thank you, Chris, for making time for it. And it was definitely well worth the wait. And I really look forward to seeing you in the LBC, Long Beach City.
100%. I want to thank both you guys. Again, sorry for the many emails, and just a big shout out to my wife Maddie and 3 kids, Sophia,
Yay.
Ella, and Cal. I couldn't do any of this without them. I really think husband first, father second, surgeon third. It took me a while to get there, but gosh, it's the right order. So thank you guys.
That's fabulous. Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Well, I hope they're able to listen and enjoy this. Their dad and husband, pretty special person, and we're privileged to consider him a friend of ours. So
Yes.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you to your family for loaning you to us for this hour. I know that it's late there, and we should get you home to them.
Yeah, and thank you in advance for approving our grant application.
Oh, you're hilarious. Oh, on that same note, hey Kevin, did you just say this was an hour?
Yeah, you made it.
You
I
made
made
it. You
made
made the
it.
cutoff.
You made the cutoff. Good stuff. We'll throw some links in the show notes for anyone who wants to check out the RDN, and certainly the abstract submission site. Hopefully you're getting those ready, and we'll talk to everybody in about a month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you both.
And before we finish, we have decided to add one new segment to SAGES Stories, one we'll call our SAGES Committee Moment. Today, we will hear from Alisa Calabrese, who has an exciting announcement from the SAGES Guidelines Committee. Alisa, what's new with your committee?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak on the SAGES Stories platform. My name is Alisa, and I wanted to discuss with you the SAGES ASRNIPS Evidence Guidance Research Scholarship, which I'm currently the research fellow for. It's an amazing opportunity for surgical residents that are planning on doing a 2-year research commitment. The position is funded by both SAGES and the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons, or RACS for short. For SAGES, the role would involve leading several projects in the Guidelines Committee team. This means that you would be performing robust systematic reviews and then taking that data to help panels of leaders in the field develop guidelines in the topic of interest. For RACS, you would be obtaining a master's degree by research at the University of Adelaide and evaluating the guideline development process, including ways to overcome some of its challenges, including dissemination, implementation, and surgery-specific obstacles. The fellowship requires you to reside in Adelaide, Australia. I've been here the past year and it's spectacular. It's been the adventure of a lifetime, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to spend my time here and that I get to keep doing it for another year. I will come out of this with at least 10 publications, likely 15, maybe more. There is also a lot of opportunity for networking within and outside of the United States, and equally opportunities for presentations within Australia and back in the States. The application can be found on the SAGES and RACS websites, but also please feel free to contact me at any time with questions and spread the word if you can. Thank you all for your time, and I hope to hear from you.
Well, thanks so much for that update. Hopefully there will be some interest for what sounds like an amazing position. And that wraps up today's episode of SAGES Stories. You can view the show notes for any links to sites we referenced today. Visit sages.org for membership information and for the most recent news from our society. Follow us on Twitter at @sages_updates. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. See you again next time, and remember, you can't spell minimally invasive surgery without SAGES.